Welcome to week 6, saying yes and no. So looking back into February, this is week 6 of the Dreamer Challenge. So the goal is to produce 52 straight videos, so over 52 weeks. So the rest of this year. And so here we are in week 6, saying yes and no. And the importance of that coming not only from, a financial investing perspective or a, mental focus of, the 10,000 hour rule, of if you just pour 10,000 hours into something, you'll become an expert in that at a world-class level. And yes, that is a factor that contributes to that. They actually showed what's actually more important is deliberate, focused practice. So practice where you're getting feedback from peers and there are people who are just ahead of you. Like if your dream is to open an entrepreneurial business, then maybe you should make friends with other entrepreneurs. Or if your goal is to go to the CrossFit Games this year, or to run a marathon, or to paint your first landscape painting on a giant canvas, then you need to have some people giving you feedback that have done it themselves, because it's nice to hear feedback from family, friends, or that random neighbor, and give you feedback. But if they haven't done it themselves, then are you actually just seeking external validation, or are you actually trying to improve? Not that they're opinions and feedback isn't valid, because it is a data point, but I mean, how biased and unbiased would that be? And wouldn't you rather have it from like the person who's just literally a couple steps ahead of you? If your goal is to transition your side hustle, like printmaking business, into like a full-time thing, wouldn't you want to find someone who's 1 to 3 years in, already hitting in 5-6 figure months steadily, to be giving you feedback than someone not? And ideally in that situation, that hypothetical, you would want someone who's probably hit their first 6-figure year and not doing 6 figures a month, because they're vastly going to be different than you just starting out. So the importance of saying yes and no, it's not just about deep focused work. It's also about having a range of different things to get different perspective, because what makes you unique and the products that you bring and the dreams that you're chasing are the experience. It's the whole aggregate of everything together that makes you unique and is your unique selling point, whether that's your business, whether that's the work you're producing, whether that's, in the office. So there is this balancing act of saying yes to certain things, which means you have to say no to other stuff, because we don't have an infinite amount of time. And so, for me, coming back to this, it's like, man, this past week, got a lot of writing in, which was really cool, which meant I had to say no to a lot of things, because if I'm saying yes to writing, that means my time is more valuable because I have less of it. So I can't say yes to as many things as I would like, because if I say yes to things I would really like, then I don't have as much time for writing. If that's the dream, then that's what's being poured into. Although time isn't the only factor pouring into your dream, because you may have, a 9 to 5. You may work 60, 70, 80 hour weeks, and your dream is this side hustle YouTube channel that you're starting, or, a writing project, or, volunteering at an animal sanctuary. And maybe that's where you're giving 100% of your heart to, and that's your dream, but you can't give 100% of your time. You can't even give like 10% of your time, because you're working so much. But that's just for now, right? Saying yes to say no. So really, it's figuring out and knowing where you want to go, and then what are the trade-offs you're willing to make to get there. Is this a full-out sprint? Because if it's a sprint, then you're going to say no to a heck of a lot more things than you would if this was like, I'm trying to reach this goal in the next year. Like if I'm trying to write a 100,000 word book in the next year, well, that looks very different than if I'm trying to do that in the next 10 days. So if I'm trying to do that in the next 10 days, That's 10,000 words a day, average, to hit your 100,000 word count. How good are those words going to be in 10 days? I don't know. You'll have to tell me. But if your goal is to write a whole book in a year, well, that's what? Less than 300 words a day, like 270 something around there words a day that you would have to write every single day. And obviously, if you miss a couple days, like that's not as important over a year because you've given yourself this long ramp of time to accomplish that. So if you miss a couple days, cool, then you just put in, a little more time, increase your word count where you're there. But if you're on the sprint, then you can't miss days. So the importance of saying no drastically increases and has exponentially more value for your return on your dream or whatever you're trying to accomplish. And so, for example, like pursuing writing, like I would love to pour more time into writing right now, but the goal and the focus is finishing Firefighting Academy, finishing all the hiring progress to get hired on as a firefighter EMT. Like that's the main focus of this season in my life right now. And so I have to say yes to more of those things, which I love and want to, while saying no to some other stuff as far as, am I going to take, 4 hours out of writing today? Or, where does that time come from as well? Because we have these commitments going on. And so it's like, what are the trade-offs that you're willing to make? And it's not just what are the time trade-offs too when you're saying yes as well as saying no, because it's also about brain capital. It's also about social capital. So if you're an extrovert like me, then we have a lot more capacity for wanting to hang out with other people and wanting to see other people. And so that's why I love going to the gym. I love doing CrossFit, high intensity workouts. I love, outdoor nature exercises in groups especially. So anytime I can get in a group, not only for the accountability piece, but also because I love meeting people and asking them questions and learning about them, like genuinely interested. And so anytime I do anything outside of writing, I'm like, how can I make this more of a community-based aspect? Can I do this with a friend? So walk our dog every single day, usually an hour and a half a day. My wife and I split them. So our dog, who's currently napping upstairs, gets walked, 3+ hours a day. Now, if I had to take that all on myself, which I do right now, then cool. Then it would just be me and nature. But how can I aggregate more wins while doing that? Is it, I like to call family and friends who I haven't spoken to in a while and rotate through the list. And if you see this, so tend to rotate through every couple of weeks, every month or so, and just call people, is it 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour on our walks? Get to touch base, get to talk to people, get to reconnect, which is really cool. So stacking an already habit that's already happening consistently with something else that I really want to do as far as extroverting, because right now it's been a lot of time studying for fire, writing. It's a lot of very isolated things. So I'm trying to maximize my social return on my investment in this other capacity. But also, what's the brain investment? So the more things that you take on, the less cognitive ability you have to show up in certain capacities. So if the goal is writing, if the goal is this artwork, if the goal is, making ceramic pots that you want to donate and use to raise money to fund something that you really care and are passionate about, cool. The more things you say yes to, the more your brain is pulled in 1,000 different directions. And even if you do the deep focused work, you're also being pulled in 1,000 different directions, whether they are subconsciously on your mind while you're doing this dream and this thing, or subconsciously they're still going to be there. So, it's not just about time. It's not just about social capital. It's not just about finances. It's also about the mental capacity and brain capital and space to keep things focused. Now, if you ever read the book Range, which I highly recommend, it's kind of a counter argument, more of a rebalancing act to the 10,000 hour rule, Malcolm Gladwell, and Range, which I think is, I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to get it wrong, but I have it upstairs. So it's a balancing act of, yes, there is a lot of data that suggests the importance and return on just deep focus work on one thing for sure, but also the importance of actually doing other things as well. And these two things together balance each other out and creates this beautiful through line of this long, stable growth trajectory. So the importance of saying yes and no, not just as far as time. And then realizing that, all of our dreams, all of the wealth that we're chasing, all the happiness that we're chasing, whatever it is we are trying to achieve, the best way that we can do that is trying to make it as sustainable as possible. So if you want to be a writer, if you want to be an artist, if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's not how can you only win business today to reach your first million. It's how can you take that million and compound that every single year? How can you do that for the next 40, 50 years? How can you build something that's going to last? Like everyone wants to make the quick money, everyone wants to write the quick book, which is totally possible. Like we've seen people do it, like people do it all the time. Now, what's the amount of return compared to someone who's building a business for the next 40, 50 years that are going to take on that entire journey and that arc of return over that long time? Going to have way more fulfillment, going to learn a lot more, probably have a bigger ROI. So, it's how can you set yourself up to be sustainable in the long term? And, really the difference in like wealth and happiness and achievement is kind of the difference between like your expectation of what needs to be done versus the reality of what the situation is. And that differential is where you have more fulfillment and you have more happiness, and you're actually able to show up day after day, week after week. Now, they don't always look the same. Life happens. I'm in a season of focus on something that isn't writing, which is totally okay, because I know long term, even though I'm not writing as much in this current season, that I'm going to be able to do exponentially more writing long term by pursuing my passion, becoming a firefighter, EMT, showing up, being present, helping people on their worst days. And that sustainability and that stability and that structure is going to allow me to thrive in what is also my dream of writing. And so the importance of that is, saying yes and saying no. You don't need to say yes to every opportunity, because every opportunity you say yes to means that you're not going to have some future capacity to say yes to other things. So it's almost like you have to keep this little spare, right? Like we have a spare tire in our car. Well, you need to have some spare space in your calendar. You need to have some spare brain capital. You need to have some spare energy. You need to have some spare social capital, some spare financial capital. It's called an emergency fund. Everyone should have one. So having these spare or emergency-like funds at which you can deploy strategically when this amazing opportunity comes along that you just have to say yes to, because it's going to change your life and everyone else's life around you. So saying yes and saying no, and the importance of that towards moving towards your dream, and also realizing that, we're going to say yes to things that don't have, the payoffs that we really want, that we're going to go to events and stuff, and maybe, it's not going to be the best time. As long as you learn from them, learn from every single thing that you do, you are always going to be better at making these decisions, at moving closer towards your goals, closer towards your dreams, closer towards more of a wealthy and rich life, closer towards more happiness. Say yes and say no, and realize, does this set me up for not only success today, but for future success as well? Because it doesn't matter how fast we go in a race. All that matters is we cross that finish line. Now everyone's like, well, life is a journey and there's no finish line. It's true. But if you sprint through life and burn yourself out, then how are you going to enjoy the rest of the journey when there's like 75 years more to go, 80 more years more to go, So, there are times to sprint in certain categories of life, hopefully not in all of them. And there are times to pace yourself as well, or to dial back and just Maybe go on a walk in nature. Maybe that's it. Maybe call a friend for 5 minutes. Maybe actually just sit at your desk, close your eyes, breathe through your nose, fresh energy, happiness, wellness, well-being, abundance, growth. And out through the mouth, stress, negativity, everything that doesn't serve you. And then let's show up and keep showing up and see what happens. Because it's not a sprint. And here for the long term. So let's see where we go. And until then, I will be over here believing in you and wishing you all the abundance and all the happiness. Peace.